Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, switching to my radio voice. And today I have with me Josh Levine, founder and CEO at Cake and Arrow. Josh, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
It's going well. All good. Happy Friday.
Awesome. Happy Friday. And we are recording on Friday, July 19th, which is it's been a weird few weeks, right?
I'd say.
We won't get political, but we had the debate. Then we had the attempted assassination. And this morning we woke up to half the airlines in the world being down for the last several hours. So it's been a crazy, crazy time. Hopefully, and this won't go out for like a month. So hopefully a month from now, when people are listening to this, there are not another few like ridiculously insane things that have happened.
Good old Microsoft. Good old Microsoft. That's why I'm happy. I wanted to make sure we were on Zoom, so we're good.
Correct. My girlfriend actually has an interview later today, not for a job, for her doctorate program, and that one's supposed to be on Teams. So we're not sure how well that's gonna go. So Josh, it looks like you are in New York City, and late July. I'm guessing New York City is a freaking oven like Atlanta right now.
It is an absolute oven. It's gotten better. Yesterday, I've not been outside today, but I have a French bulldog, and honestly, anytime I go outside, he lasts maybe 5 steps, and both of us we can't breathe, and I pick him up and we go back in. So, like my dog, I'm not great in the heat, but surviving.
That's been Atlanta, Georgia for the last month.
Has it?
I go out and roller skate with the sunrise. And then I go out and roller skate with the sunset. And during the day, like I walk to the grocery store, which is next door. But yeah, it is just horrifically hot. So we always give the guest the chance to give the elevator pitch. What is Cake and Arrow?
For sure. Before I do that, I do want to show this one thing, this little token that I have. I wanted to surprise you. That's been sitting in my bag since, there we go. So I just had to break out the card from that magic trick.
Really, like you have no idea how much I love the fact that people say mementos for magic tricks. Thank you so much.
I knew you would.
Thank you.
So no, thank you for having me. We've been talking about this a long time coming. So yeah, Cake and Arrow, we are an experience design and product innovation firm, and we work exclusively with the insurance industry. So we'll partner with carriers, with distributors, with service providers to leverage human-centered design and strategy throughout all stages of the life cycle. So early on, that typically means uncovering new business opportunities through like deep research and then we'll craft digital strategies. We'll also design, launch, and optimize digital products and services. And that's everything from, you name it, policyholder and quoting experiences through agent and broker tools, HR, employee portals, enterprise software, even customizing out of the box or optimizing out of the box platforms. And then we'll help insurance companies scale those product capabilities, right? So helping them kind of infuse human-centered mindset so that they could keep up with today's market. And essentially, Tony, like our goal is to make buying, selling, servicing insurance better for everyone. And our philosophy is that companies are able to kind of fulfill the needs of the people they serve, right? Employees, customers, agents, underwriters. Those are the ones who are going to see or have seen differentiation in business growth. And most people don't really associate design with or human centricity with insurance, but honestly, that's like exactly what drew us to it.
Yeah, we don't associate it with insurance. We don't associate it with agent portals. Nope. We definitely don't associate it with any sort of enterprise software. At least in my working career, where enterprise software let's say 2006, so when I graduated college to today,
Yep,
my experience with enterprise software is it's pretty much always crappier to use
yep,
than what I use at home. And then that like it got even worse with the mobile revolution, right? My iPhone became really awesome.
yep.
My work software kept being really crappy. Uh,
It
so
just didn't change. It just didn't
yeah,
change.
yeah, and to the point that like I my last two jobs, well, my last job and my current self-employment,
Hmm.
my own little company, um, I I I I run it on a Mac, and my last job was the best example where like I had a company laptop that I literally never touched because I was able to do everything on my Mac, and just the user experience was so much better, right?
Yep.
And luckily the tool was a good web-based tool, and my current tool is basically Salesforce, so it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Hi, so in InsurTech, I am used to lots of silly names, right? The InsurTech Zoo. In fact, at my last company, not so much now because I do so much InsurTech now, but at my last company, the few InsurTechs that I brought in, uh, the recruiting team would always make fun of the names, right? Because they were used to working with names like Allstate and Nationwide, and all of a sudden
Right.
I'm bringing
Right.
names like Bold Penguin and Zebra, and right. Okay, so I'm used to silly names, but you guys I'm not gonna say particularly silly. I'm gonna say particularly unique. So
Yeah.
what is the story of the name? Why did you decide to call it Cake and Arrow?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, I had a feeling you were going to ask that question. It's probably one of the most oft asked ones. I mean, so the name Cake and Arrow, just to us, is always meant to symbolize our value proposition, which kind of mentioned at a high level is humanizing um, a traditional industry like insurance. So cake, that represents the human side, right? So it's something, as you know, cake is something that people love and appreciate. It brings delight. It really taps into emotion. And through creativity, it can be customized based on whoever you're giving it to, the individual's needs or personality or preferences. And really, cake at the end of the day, it really is all about people. It's created for people, created by people, shared within a group of people. So naturally, we always felt that tied kind of to what we do in terms of creating solutions that are rooted in needs. Flip to the other side, right? The arrow, and that's represents kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, that rigor around product and business strategy, right? And really kind of honing in on achieving business goals and solving real tangible problems and kind of creating measurable results. And I know we like to think that insurance kind of requires both that cake and an arrow, right? That kind of convergence, I like to say, of humanity and with business and technology that I do think is so critical for insurance companies today to differentiate and thrive and keep up with modern expectations. So taking it. Yeah.
Fantastic. That makes a ton of sense. I've had people say when I ask about our company names, I've had people say, "Oh, it's a foreign word in such and such language that means
Yeah.
this." I've had people say too much tequila when we were naming the company. This is a really good, like, I like that the symbology. Let's see, symbology, I think is the right word. I like the meaning of it. Fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
um
And again, it's always you get that something intriguing about it. Tell me about it. And it's feels good. We're proud of it. And it represents us for sure.
Fantastic. And I'm always curious on on the origin story of the company,
Yeah.
and especially uh what you guys do is something every industry needs. So how
Yep.
did you end
Yeah.
up with a specific focus in my beloved world of insurance?
Yes. Well, I like the tone of that. Most of the time when I'm asked why insurance, it has actually a different tone. But in brand, Tony, you're always this optimist and give off this good vibe and such a good advocate for the industry. But it's normally like, why would you choose insurance? You're a design firm. And a lot of times I think that that question is rooted in the fact that, like I said, the industry doesn't really isn't associated with design, right? And people associate it with deep complexity and business problems and all those, business related things. And it's funny because I often, just some background, I'm an art school graduate, designer by trade. So I often get invited to speak at art schools to, design students about, this journey of what you can do. Um, and it's funny because they all go down the same way. And I say, I've been running an agency, design firm for 20 years, love using design as a change agent, blah, blah, blah. And typically like the students will perk up and lean in with interest. And then I drop that bombshell on them. And I'm like, oh, and we specialize in insurance. And Tony, every time it's the same reaction of, leaning
what
back, the head
what
tilt.
what it makes me think of is the Simpsons episode where the Simpsons go to Branson, Missouri, and
Yeah.
the sign outside of town when they're coming in says, "So you settled for Branson."
Yes.
So
It's
you settled for insurance. That's what they
I,
have to be thinking.
I was at a I was speaking at a conference recently, and I needed a picture to put up to tell that story, and it's that Spock face. It was a Spock face. And it's honestly like where Spock does that tilt and he questions. It really is that kind of really face insurance, and the truth is like I know that look well. So like I said, we've been around 20, we turned 22. Kate and I turned 22 a couple days ago. And I had a similar reaction as an outsider when insurance first came knocking about 12 years ago. So our first 10 years was in actually retail and e-commerce. So think about, we're focusing on big brands, New Balance and Bose and Saks Fifth Avenue. And then I get a call about 10, 12 years ago from an insurance company, and they're asking for us to design a portal for their agents. And keep in mind, we're focused solely on like direct to consumer and all big brands that we've heard of. So I was skeptical going into it. I made that Spock face because honestly, like, this is true of most outsiders. At the time, as an outsider, I only knew insurance through this very narrow perspective, right? And actually it's the customer perspective. But honestly, that first project really peeled back the layers, and it really allowed us to view the industry through this kind of new lens as an insider. And we discovered, and I know you talk about this a lot, just there is so much more to insurance than meets the eye. It is such a complex, beautiful, incredibly nuanced business. And that, again, as you know, and you're a center of it, is anchored by such a close-knit community with this unbelievably rich history and deep expertise, right? So, and to be honest, it kind of felt like we were entering, especially in the beginning, like a new country where it's its own language and it does have its own cultural norms. And it's something to keep in mind. We could talk about it later of recruiting and getting new folks. It is not easy to be an outsider in an insider industry, but since then, just we have not looked back. I've worked with over 35 different carriers and distributors, and we've been lucky enough to be able to immerse ourselves in the culture, the industry culture, and see how decisions are made and problems are solved. And we've also been able to do a lot of user research on the front lines, right, where we get to observe what are customers and agents and employees kind of seeing and feeling and experiencing. So that dual role as a insider outsider has really been something we've been trying to stay true to. It is kind of our value prop to be able to toe that line between being an expert, but also having that outside perspective, because you have to be both. You can't, everyone who's listening to this, and this, you can't just come into this industry with so-and-so background and think you're going to be able to solve real problems.
That was the entire history of InsurTech 1.0. What was tech
Exactly.
tech founders who could not spell the word insurance coming to us basically going, we have a cool tech hammer, looking for an insurance nail and completely missed the mark. And some of them
Yeah.
IPO'd very, very well, and then like uh
I
so
mean,
yes, it is an incredibly if there's one thing we keep hearing over and 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 over again is, oh wow, this is a lot more complicated than we thought.
it is.
Right.
It is.
uh,
And you saw it last night. Like, I don't know if you saw, I think it was Micah, someone's post of like, even today,
uh,
it's going to
it,
get called out. Like, you're not going to, it is
it,
going to get called out by the community.
it,
And
it,
it's not it's right. It is, there is some aspects of, okay, we've seen it
um,
before. So yeah,
if somebody's getting called out, it is always Micah.
yes.
It is always Micah Cooper. Uh, if somebody's no, that's not true. Sometimes Matteo Carbone does it, but Matteo has such a suave Italian way to do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like Matteo leads with numbers. But if somebody's getting called out with like a like aluminum bat to the head, it's
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
Micah Cooper. That doesn't mean he's wrong.
No.
It's just his style, and Micah has nothing to lose since he's CEO of his own little company.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
all right, and I will try to remember to link that post. But yes, absolutely, this is just an incredibly complex industry that will eat you alive if you
it,
don't understand how it really works
it
deep
will.
down. Uh,
It will, but I would add, it is also coming from someone who worked in other industries beforehand. It is an abnormally, unusually kind, and I would even say even more so loyal. That's probably why I'm still here, is because when you do good by somebody, and I've been lucky to have long-term clients, like it's hard to get in. Once you're in and you provide value, you're in. You're in, and that I think is unlike anything that is out there. So
in,
yeah,
in insurance, it's now been 15 years for me, and I spent the first 4 years of my career in transportation,
okay,
truckers, like managing truck drivers. In insurance is the exact opposite of cutthroat when it comes to, I mean, selling insurance is very competitive. Selling personal lines is extremely competitive. But the people that end up staying in insurance, and whether the same company or just in the industry and staying for 30, 40, 50 years, and we have many,
yeah,
many, 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 many of those, uh, they didn't stay because they had lots of social status from being in insurance. They didn't stay because they could completely maximize their earnings here.
right,
We are an industry where you can do really well while doing good for the world
yep,
and for the economy, and getting very little credit for it. And the people that stay tend to be those that like helping others. And
yep,
that's the same way that it is internally. Once you're in, the community will absolutely be there to help you out. So yeah, this
yes,
I love that coming in from the outside, you saw that. Zara Cataltepe, who I had in an episode that went live earlier this week,
mm-hmm.
uh, she designs AI, and with Tassie AI, and there's a clip from her presentation from her appearance in the podcast that I really love, where she said that she fell in love with insurance when in a meeting, the underwriting guy raised his hand and said, hey, there's an Excel file that we use in underwriting that IT doesn't have, which
Yep,
will probably help improve the model. Here it is, right? And she's like, oh my god, if they can collaborate across sides of the business that well, with very little selfishness, they're going to be incredibly successful.
yep,
And that happens across companies. We're a little bit restricted on like to make sure that we're being competitive, but yes. All right, Cap. So design. I am not an expert on design, but I am a bit of a nerd who spends his whole day on YouTube. While I'm recruiting or whatever it is I'm
mhm,
doing, I'm generally listening to YouTube kind of on the background. And I have gone down rabbit holes when it comes, in my case, video game design is what I've gone down
yep,
rabbit holes. But I'm an Apple fan, and I've also gone down rabbit holes on like tech product design, like hardware design. But basically, the
Yep.
average listener to this podcast, the word design, in their mind, the first thing that comes to mind is probably like an interior designer or a graphic designer.
Correct.
Both things that are very aesthetic based, right?
Correct. Correct.
But it sounds like you guys' focus is well beyond that. So tell me, like, how do you view design when it comes to more than just the aesthetics of something?
Yep. Yeah. And I think that perception, you're 100% right, particularly in this industry. And I think it goes back to this fundamental misunderstanding, right, of design that a lot of people have, which is that it's the pretty screen. And the reality is design, like I said, design isn't what happens on the surface. It actually is the structure. Design is the structure, right? And that structure it is built through rigorous research and strategy and planning and design decisions are very deliberate and very scientific. They're very evidence backed. And like good design is strategic, and there's intent behind it, and it starts with people. And the surface actually, right? What the user sees, what the agent sees and interacts with, that really is just the end result, if that makes sense, of the work, the deep work of design. I like to think that design is, ultimately it's like the manifestation of really just intent to better serve people, whether that is a Stanley mug or e-commerce sites or a portal or a claims experience, right? And when design is in the service of people, it does have 100% the proven power to drive growth and increase loyalty, because you're creating products and services that meet unmet needs and solve real challenges. It impacts the bottom line, increases efficiency and operational costs, right? Because these streamlined internal tools that make it easier for agents, for underwriters, for employees to do business, similar to the story you told earlier of what you were used to working on, and the tools you were used to doing. There's design is what takes that and makes it easier for you to conduct business, makes it easier for you to convert, makes it easier for you to sell, makes your job better, lets you tap into new markets. And I do think, and you'll appreciate this, the part that's probably most overlooked in terms of like the power of what design really does is those words: job satisfaction and productivity, especially when it comes to future talent, which you know better than me, and the efforts that are being made to recruit and retain kind of the younger generation. Design plays a big role in terms of the tool we provide them. But you know what, the reality is, whether the industry or whether a corporation wants design or not, it is happening. Whether it's the game you're looking at, whether it is the Zoom UI you are playing with, whether it is the ugliest website in the world, every single insurance product, every single service, every experience is the result of design, regardless of whether or not someone who's technically a designer was creating it. And because at the end of the day, someone is making these plans and decisions that define how people interact with your brand and tools. And more often than not, these decisions are very tech driven. They are reactions to maybe urgent business priorities or serving kind of short term, whatever long term marketing goals. And I think when design starts there, that is when it starts to fall short. So yeah.
Okay, so some very very interesting points there. When it comes to employee retention, yes, it might seem silly to a lot of our current leadership that somebody would change jobs because the you guys have a green screen and the other company system is amazing, and makes their day better every given day. Yes, people will change jobs over that, especially at the entry level. And people will change jobs over being allowed to work from a Mac if they're Mac people, right? Those things seem very silly to the current generation of leadership that is slowly retiring and being replaced by Gen
Mhm.
Xers. But they're definitely realities. And I really love the
Yeah.
point of whether you're bringing in the best designer you can, or whether you're just letting the engineers build it.
Yeah.
uh, Design is happening. It just might not be happening in a good way, right? And it's very similar to in insurance. We learn to think how um, whether a driver or a homeowner or a business owner has insurance or not,
Mhm.
uh, like risk is still there, right? A risk management decision is still being made to
Right.
retain the risk, which might not be the wisest. So similar story, just like we encourage our clients to use an agent and make proper decisions with their insurance and their risk, and just like we expect our bigger clients, our commercial lines clients, to use risk managers, uh, we should also on our
Yeah.
side engage not only engineers but also designers, and you made a beautiful case for it. Um,
Good case. I'd also, you brought up that point about people, especially younger generation, will leave and go somewhere else. It's even worse than that sometimes, in a sense that if they don't have the digital tools to be productive, um, they don't leave to go somewhere else. They leave the industry, and that's the stuff that breaks my heart. And
it,
I heard a story
yes,
recently. I heard a
yes.
story recently, and it crushed me. And it was, we're at a conference, we did a workshop, and it was, I think you were even at it, Resource Pro, whatever it might have been, and someone mentioned, we were talking about recruiting and all that stuff, and someone stood up and told a story of, she's working at a broker for 35 years or some odd, her whole career, and her son was an intern. She got him an internship at a broker, senior in college. Long story short, he he came home. He's like, I don't want to do this. I don't. This isn't for me. The tools, the processes, and that kind of broke her heart of an industry she's so proud of. And to hear that from your family, that it hits home. It hits home when you hear stories like that, and it's true. Just up, there's tons of research out there, stuff I know you've done too, on the younger generation. One thing that's non-negotiable, and it's not a luxury, is having good digital tools to do their jobs.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, if at conferences, when I speak about how to engage the next generation, there's a couple of things. When often somebody gets up at the end of the presentation and goes like, okay, so you're telling me that on average they'll stick around for 11 months. You're
Yep.
telling me that they come in with expectations of being a VP next year, which of course they're not going to be. You're telling me all of this difficult news. Uh, how uh, how do we keep them, right? And the second half of the presentation is all about how to keep them. But I I can't guarantee you'll be able to keep them in the company. If we can keep them in the industry, that's a win
Yeah,
for all of us, right? If,
it
if
is.
we all work together to keep them in the industry, that's a win for the industry, even if we can't keep them in the company. Uh, oh, and the comment about somebody's kid interning and saying this is not for me. It's so sad because it's such an awesome career. Uh, we have a great career with crappy entry level jobs,
Right.
and those crappy entry level jobs are probably the jobs that are most affected by crappily designed systems. And there's the ones that have not yet seen the awesomeness of an insurance career, so they're the most easy to scare away during their first few years in the industry. um uh okay, so going back to design,
Mhm.
um how can the industry leverage proper design, good design, human-centric design, best in class design, like
Mhm.
Apple, Disney design, Apple, Disney, Google design. I don't know who else is like really great designing in the company. In order to reduce the risk that all this money we're throwing at InsurTech, at digital, at modernizing our systems, how can we reduce the risk that those initiatives fail by having good design?
Yeah, so this is where, when we were talking earlier about design being what happens early in the process, not just at the end, comes to play. So risk in this case, I mean, as you know, you just said it, right? We know significant investments are being made and allocated to digital initiatives. But the reality is that seeing results from majority, and there's numbers out there, digital, seeing results from those investments are, it's far from guaranteed. I think it's something like 70% of digital transformation initiatives fall short or just don't necessarily meet the expectations of the business or profitability goals. So it's a risky endeavor to introduce new digital products and processes to the market. So we've been at this for a while. And I think typically one of the core issues that we see is that a lot of product or more of the traditional development teams, they simply just didn't consider the people they were building the products for and services for. Teams tend to jump right into and start with technology, right? And they end up overlooking the needs of the real people and the actual problems that need to be solved. And it's when that happens, that is when you have products that fail to resonate and that have a poor ROI. And this is, to me, this is where, this is where real human-centered design comes into play, right? It really is a means to increase the odds and quote unquote mitigate the risk by increasing your likelihood to succeed. And you do that a few ways, right? One is through what I keep talking about, this early discovery and research, where before you make any big expensive decisions, you're developing this deep understanding of customers or the agents or the employees or the future hires, whatever it is, their needs, their behaviors, their pain points, some sort of fundamental understanding. Because once you're equipped with those insights, you can then direct our digital investments and all the efforts towards solving those problems and needs that we uncovered. And that significantly reduces the risk of developing and investing in these large solutions that ultimately won't resonate. And there's other ways, again, you hear a lot about once you do make a choice, and you see this a lot in the industry, is, okay, we're going down this path, even if they have a sound strategy, that's 2 years, sometimes a year, 8 months to build and get it to market, but it is heads down. We're going to build that thing and get it live when we can. There's no turning back, right? The roadmap is created, and we're big on kind of iterative design and validation, more the human part of what you hear a lot about, agile. So really testing, doing low fidelity designs, not the pretty stuff you see on Google. Low fidelity meaning directional. It could be, you hear terms wireframes. They're not meant to be pretty. They're meant to be quick, and they're meant to get a reaction from somebody to know, am I going in the right direction? Because if you're not, and if Tony looks at it and, we see him gets a little confused trying to, do a certain kind of task, okay, let's go back. And now we can make quick changes to that design before it's built, before all the requirements are done, and before it's kind of set in the roadmap, because it's significantly cheaper and faster to make changes earlier on in design and discovery, as opposed to something that is built. And that's where you hear terms like technical debt and design debt, because those, once they're in place and they compound each other, it's hard to, they dig a deep hole. It's hard to come back. It's hard to just make a tweak. It's not a bug.
If insurance carriers had to measure and recognize technical debt as a liability on their balance sheets, I think we'd have like half as many carriers around today.
Yeah, and there are huge decisions, back to like earlier when we were talking about design decisions are getting made regardless of whether you like it or not, regardless whether there are insights. informing them, there are decisions that are being made that might feel small at the time that, like you just said, are huge, costly decisions. Then they're big and they're small ones. Yeah, you know, that design in terms of like mitigating risk is once the product or the experience is done. I think you'd see this, you probably agree with me on this, of what you see a lot when it comes to digital is it's a checkbox. Okay, we launched this portal. Boom, let's jump to the next one. Next digital experience. Okay, let's jump to the next one. And that certainly is progress, but the issue there is it becomes old quickly and people's needs are changing and new people are being hired. And you know, all these things going on. So this concept of continuous discovery beyond when you put something in market, and live is a part of the design process, so that you can again mitigate risk of it becoming stale, increase the likelihood of adoption, of retaining. So it's all about just increasing the odds and doing it
So
early and not being a cosmetic kind of layer, if you will.
it it sounds like it's basically a mind shift, a
Mhm.
mindset move, a mindset change, a mindset shift, to push the industry to a better level of design to be able to connect with our customers and with our employees.
Yes.
Uh, so if it is a mindset shift, what's keeping us from fully embracing it, or is it being embraced and I'm just not there in those conversations?
No, it's again, you've been around, most of the listeners have been in this industry for a long time. I think even us as humans in the industry, like we're hardwired to do things uh, a certain way, right? And you build up biases over time. And like I said earlier, there's the cultural norms that may have felt normal, you know, 5, 10 years ago. But as the saying goes, right, was it culture? And to me, culture will devour strategy and vision and execution, you know, for breakfast. It's so true. So you know, in order to kind of adapt and connect with the new customer mindset, and employee mindset, you have to adopt a new mindset of our own, and embrace this people first uh, kind of approach to problem solving, to prioritizing, to thinking. And like I said, that is not in the DNA of an industry that's been doing things a certain way for so long. It doesn't come easy. There is no flick of a switch. There's no design thinking workshop or book. It takes time. It's a muscle that needs to be built. And I do think one shift that we talk about a lot, or that we see, is that what I mentioned earlier, jumping away from solution mode, and kind of really understanding the problem. Eh, the being hardwired, like problem comes up, and immediately people just want to solve it. Again, human nature. That's how we work. But with insurance, that gets amplified a ton, because the decisions to, oh, we need to use AI. Okay, let's implement it. Let's put it into place, or whatever it is. Enter a new platform. Those decisions require years, and significant resources and significant budgets. So you see, in order to execute, so you see a lot of of you know, solutioning and jumping into solutions that really is rooted in the temptation to start with technology. And we got to move away from that. It's hard not to, you know, when all the vendors and all these amazing technologies out there, hard not to be like, all right, that we need to be on that platform. We need to integrate that. But that is where I do think a lot of problems arise, because all the best technology in the world, we've seen it over and over, is useless if it's not valuable, if it's not solving a problem. So I do think it's time to really dismantle assumptions by collectively asking why, before we jump into the what. I think jumping from shifting from thinking the solution is so obvious, um, to kind of reframing the problem in human terms. Like I said, when you're at it for a while, it seems like it's right there. I've done this before. I know how people think. I know what my customer wants. I used to be an agent. I know what my agents need. It seems so obvious, but 9 out of 10 times it's not. And the reality is that you're not aware of the solution. You've got to talk to people and get under it. So there's others. I mean, a big one is the move, to digitize the experience. I think shifting from this pure digitizing to humanizing. And I think everyone probably listening to this and as you know, has some sort of digitization initiative on their roadmap or that they're working on. But I always say, like, are you truly improving the customer or employee experience? Or are you simply just shifting materials from, this paper into a different kind of medium? So I do think by solely prioritizing digitization and not factoring in the human impact, we're not elevating the experience. And yeah, there's this perception, I hear it more often than not, unfortunately, that we just got to digitize first. We'll do the design, we'll do the humanizing and all that stuff later, but we got to get this stuff. We gotta just digitize.
So later's too late to get the design right.
It's too expensive. Like, that is where, again, I understand that rationale, especially these days. But again, that's when you look at design as this cosmetic, add-on rather than a fundamental strategic driver. That I get why people view it like that. And another one roots back to what I was saying earlier of how we toe this line between insider and outsider. If there's something I have learned, again, this industry is a very insider industry culturally, because we've all been in it for so long. And I do think we're missing out on kind of opening ourselves up to what's happening on the outside. I think you mentioned you were in transportation. Things like what I've learned a lot from retail that can be applied here. I don't think there's enough, kind of contradicts some of what we were talking earlier, but pulling in from other industries and or recruiting from other industries to kind of get different mindsets and different kind of outsider perspectives, because this deep expertise is the biggest strength of this industry. But I do think it needs to be augmented. It only gets stronger when you pull in that outside view. No one's pushing that away, and there's no reason to be intimidated. And I think that's where you get into, you see it a lot. Competitive intelligence. What is the other CEO doing? And 9 out of 10 P&C companies are doing this, and really kind of shifting that to customer intelligence, right? An ongoing basis. And I want to see similar rigor. I love the rigor put into understanding the market. I want to see similar rigor put into understanding the customer on an ongoing basis. And it's important to have that outside perspective, because when you are so close to the business and you're in a different seat, because you get to talk to so many different facets, but when you're working for a single company and see the single processes, you lose sight of especially when I deal with folks in operations, they're so focused on certain metrics, they lose sight of the people that are ultimately touching the tools. And that is the joy of the work, right? Like, that's my favorite part of the job, is connecting those.
And you know what? In our industry, I think it happens more because we tend to, and I'm thinking through this as I say it.
Yeah.
But we tend to retain people for a long time, right? And I think that the future is going to be different. But we have a lot of leaders that grew up in the company and spent their whole life in the company, and they're now leading the company at any insurance carrier and a lot of insurance brokers. And so if you think about it, if you are now 68 years old, CEO of a major carrier, or let's put a name and last name on it. Okay, so I came from Nationwide, and Steve Rasmussen retired after a fantastic tenure at Nationwide, 10 years as CEO, retired maybe a year and a half ago. Big fan of Rasmussen. So Steve grew up at Nationwide, Allied Insurance, then got bought out by Nationwide. So his first job out of college in the company, retired as the company CEO. So was there for 30 some years. Okay. So if just like quick math. If Rasmussen retired in 2022 and he was there for, let's say, 35 years, when he became an underwriter right out of college in 1987,
Yep.
right? The world that he grew up in, the technology that he grew up with, when he had customer facing or agency facing roles before being a VP, that before being too far away from the reality
Yeah.
of the frontline people, um, the world was very, very different from when he was making, and him and his teams were making decisions related to technology design, etc., during the 10 years he was CEO, or even
Right.
the 25 years that he was a VP at Nationwide. Uh, right, the call centers that I saw and that I was very lucky enough to work at. I worked in the Farm Bureau one, not in the Nationwide
Mhm.
one. Did not exist when those leaders started their career. Right.
Right.
Most personalized insurance was written by captive agents. Right. It was just a different world. So yes, you have to find ways to understand what the people who are actually
Right.
servicing your customer live every day.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And yeah, 1988, it's also 10 years ago, right? And that things have changed so much. And you're
Yeah,
right.
radically. Right.
People cut their teeth, like whatever the term is, like where that's
And,
where you learn those first
and
15 years. That's where it happens. That's where you shape your perspective.
like not only have we had immense technological growth, like exponential technological
Yeah,
change, but also we had the black swan of COVID and the world going
yeah,
remote. Right. That even more. Okay. Uh, we running out of time. We have like 9 minutes left, but you shared some Forrester report before we started recording, which I would not have since I don't follow that side of the world. But basically, the Forrester report found that customer experience has fallen across all industries. That
yeah.
is weird. I wouldn't have been surprised to hear that it has fallen in insurance, but I would have expected that other industries do better than us. What do you think is what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's been on the down for I think it's 3 straight years, but it's now hit the lowest, I think, in 17 years. And the truth is, and I ask you, like, you surprised, right? Like when I read that, I'm like, forget about insurance, just stuff I'm dealing with out there. And every single experience seems to be prices are going up and service, especially customer service, seems to be going down. And there's a lot of logic behind that and the market and investment and bottom line. But there's this term and my team just did a post about it. It's not my word. It's enshittification. And it's a real term. It's one that's been thrown around. I think it was word of the year last year or something like that. Anyway, this is where businesses, and there's logic behind it, they prioritize profit and bottom line over users, right? Over the customer experience. I see it in the work we do. Like there's a dip in the desire to design for the customer experience, and it's mostly for internal. So what happens when you do that is you get degraded, downgraded customer experiences. And that typically it's just like marketing, right? Like the customer experience is the thing that takes a hit when times are tough. And I do think that's across the board. I think it's a result of a lot of the automation. You know, like I know none of us like to be on that call with the, press this and do that. And I just think people are getting a lot more sophisticated and they lack the patience. And I don't care how good the AI is, like at the end of the day people want that human being. But the truth is I see the other side. Having the human being on that every single call is expensive. So right now the world, not just insurance, is kind of figuring out its way of getting to kind of know what's the right balance, because it's skewed so far into digital, and features aren't being added, that the experience is taking a an obvious dip. What I found most interesting about this report was none of the big brands, I think maybe majority of the big brands that were on it last year, they all took a dip except for a couple. One of them was Tesla. Tesla actually went up into, I guess, the elite category. And it just goes to show, with all the talk out there, I would have thought that that one would be on the, you know, between perspectives of the quote unquote product and people's perspectives on the CEO and all of that stuff. At the end of the day, the reason why was because of service. They were responding to people. They were solving problems. It was a customer service. People were feeling needed. And that, to me, there's a lesson there for insurance of your product. Is the product perfect? Nope. We know that. There's no place where products are
And we can't
perfect.
update it as fast as Tesla's
There's no button to
over the air
press.
update. Yeah.
There's nothing we could press, but at the end of the day, and we've seen this in our research, particularly related to claims and climate, is people get it. They know prices are going up. They know, they know how the world works. They just want one level up of customer service, right? If you got bad news, tell them. And if they need something resolved, be there for it. There's just this human aspect that gets lost. And I find it so interesting that Tesla of all, because of their ability to respond to needs, actually went up and none of the others did. So there's something there. It's not because of the product. It's because of how they dug themselves out, or how they dealt with challenges around the product, the realities of the product. So a lot to be learned, but check it out. There's an article on our site. It's good.
That is very cool. I for a long time was a fan of Zappos customer
Yes.
service, right? And
Send you a pizza. They send you a pizza if they're angry or whatever it is. I mean, they wrote the book.
And I pushed the book for a long time within insurance, and awesome. So if Tesla's doing something interesting in the customer service, I would love to learn more about it. Josh, this has been super interesting, super interesting. Thank you so much for your time today. Yeah,
Keep handing these out. Keep handing these out, my man. You bring such joy to this industry. Honestly, I mean that.
Thank you.
We're lucky to have you.
I
Really.
have so much fun playing this weird role that I created for myself in this very conservative industry.
Love
I
it.
have no idea how it happened. If I had planned it, it wouldn't have.
You do
But it worked out, and my plan is to never retire. My girlfriend's plan was to retire at 50. She actually retired at 38. My plan is to be able to retire, but love what I do so much that I die at the desk, kind of thing. Hopefully at 103 years old. So yeah, I'm committed to this industry for the long term.
We see it. We feel it.
See you at ITC or whatever the next one that we run into each other is at. Thank you so much for your time today.
Have a good weekend, Tony. Later, man.